Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to talk to you about my negative labour experience. There is drilling going on outside because of the cladding issues. My husband's working next to me, so he's typing away, and I do have a newborn baby, so if you can hear lots of random noises, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. I'm just trying to film as quickly as possible whilst the baby is napping. So let's get started. So I have a few disclaimers and I've written them down, so I'm just going to read them off my phone. The first thing is that I'm not talking about any particular hospital when I am talking in this video. I am also not trying to offend anybody. I also don't want to put anyone off birth or scare anybody. I'm literally just talking about my own personal experience. This has nothing to do with pharmacy and my role as a pharmacist. It's just me as a patient, literally on the other side of the NHS. So obviously I've worked for the NHS, and now on the other side of the patient, I'm telling you guys about my experience. Also, there were quite a lot of positive moments within the whole birth experience. But it was quite traumatizing as well, so I thought I would go through those. Obviously it's quite different to my usual videos, but my channel has no rules and I'm just going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And also I wanted to update my friends who asked me about the whole labour experience at the same time. So I thought it's perfect to just film a video and let you guys know what happened. As a bit of background, I had gestational diabetes during my pregnancy, and my baby's potential weight was in the 94th centile. So on the growth chart, it stated that my baby, for someone of my background and my stature, that my baby was bigger than 94% of babies at that same stage. And so I had a discussion with the consultant, and he basically said that he recommended induction of labour. I really wanted to give birth naturally, so I wanted spontaneous labour, so labour that just comes on by itself. But if that didn't happen, he recommended that I basically go in for induction and have the baby earlier than normal. Well, not normal, but earlier than, 40 weeks, because of the fact that the baby was measuring big. I really did want to give birth vaginally. So in order to do that, I was doing labour ball exercises every day. I walked every day. I had raspberry leaf tea. I also did perineal massage, literally from 32 weeks. I was doing everything that I could within my power to be able to give birth vaginally. I did not want to have a C-section. So now on to the actual timeline of what happened. So by a certain date, I was told that if you haven't gone into labour, the consultant recommends induction of labour. He didn't force me, he actually gave me a lot of information, and I agreed with him, and I thought I actually will go for induction because the baby was measuring big. So on that date, still I hadn't gone into labour. He said, on the morning that we've booked you in, just call the hospital, ask if there's any beds. So I was booked in for 10 a.m. that morning, and at 9:30 I gave the hospital a call and said, hey, I'm going to come in, I've been booked for induction. First of all, they didn't know who I was, and even though I had my hospital number ready, they were kind of confused. They weren't really sure why I was calling. But anyway, when we got to it, they said, actually there's no beds, so don't come in. And I said, well, okay, that's fine, but what's the plan? Do I have any kind of time scale or any kind of plan on what's going to happen? And they said no. I then called again at midday and just said, hi, I'm just calling again to ask if there's any beds, and I was told again there's no beds for you. So it got to about 4 p.m. and at this point my husband had booked annual leave on this day and the next day. I just wanted some form of plan, although I know it's not possible because of how stretched out the NHS was or is. Yeah, it got to 4 p.m. My husband then decided to call. He said, look, we've been waiting around all day, and I think the waiting was really hard because we had expected to go in that day, so that already felt like quite stressful. When he called at 4 p.m. they said, yes, you guys can come in for 6 p.m. We'd waited all day from 9:30 till 6 p.m. but got everything ready and went into hospital. We arrived and we were told, actually they're cleaning the bay that you're gonna be in, so you can't get a bed yet. Half an hour turned into 1 hour, turned into 2 hours, 2 hours later turned into 3 hours. By 9 p.m. we asked again, what's going on, do we get a bed? And finally they said, yes, you can go into your bed now. So I was given a bed on a shared bay with 4 other women. When I asked, okay, what's happening now? They basically said, actually the pessary that is supposed to bring on labour, which has the prostaglandins pessary basically, we've run out and we've had to request some from another hospital. And I thought this was really bizarre because you're literally on the ward for induction and they didn't have the pessaries to bring on the induction. And so I said, all right, so what is the time scale of this? And I, having worked on call, know how much time it can take to get a medication. So I said, how long is this going to take? And they said, well, we've requested it from another hospital and it's going to get couriered over, but we can't give you any time. And at this point I was like thinking, why am I even here? I literally wanted to go home, but I thought that if I go home now, then I'm still going to be told tomorrow morning there's no bed, and it's just going to go on and on and on. I felt like I just knew that I had to be in line of sight for something to be done. So we obviously stayed. At about close to midnight, they said, finally, pessaries have arrived, so you can have your pessary inserted. After that, I couldn't sleep. The contractions weren't that bad, like they were manageable, but they weren't weak enough for me to just sleep through them. I spent the whole night kind of just walking around the ward. My husband slept in the chair next to us, although there were patients that were snoring next to us in the bays. So that was another thing. There was a labour ball on the ward, so I sat on that for a bit, and it got to about 9 a.m. At 9 a.m, I felt like a gush of fluid. The midwife came and checked and she said, oh, I think your waters have broken. Once that had happened, I was still feeling really positive at that time. Like I felt like, okay, things are going to plan. They said, because your waters are broken, we're going to take out the pessary and wait for you to go into labour naturally. At around 2 p.m, I was feeling really good, and the reason I think back on it now and realise I felt that good was because I literally was having no contractions. So my contractions had started spacing out. I wasn't going into labour naturally. At 2 p.m, they checked me, they did an examination, and I was 1 centimetre dilated at the time. So because I didn't go into labour naturally, I was then offered the Prostin gel, which is dinoprostone, and it's a gel that's inserted again to bring on labour. About half an hour later, I was actually like in absolute agony. Like I felt like I was being tortured. It was just so bad. And again, this is not to put anyone off. Everyone's body has like a different reaction to it, but my body did not like this gel at all, and I was just in so much pain. So by this point I was like, right, I need pain relief, and I was offered paracetamol and dihydrocodeine. We had been told that we can have these painkillers before, but I hadn't needed it until this point. So at that point I was like, please give me the paracetamol and dihydrocodeine. I accepted those painkillers. It didn't touch me at all. Like I didn't feel better in any way or form. At this point I then became actually crazy. I was genuinely naked on all fours holding onto the bed, screaming and telling my husband, you need to go and find someone like right now. Like you need to go and get them right now and tell them that I'm in so much pain. And I could hear the other women in the bay also in a lot of pain, but they all were given gas and air. For some reason we just weren't asked about it, and I don't know whether it was our role to then ask for it, but no one even offered it to us or told us anything about it, right? And once we heard other women like breathing the gas and air, that's when we were like, can we please have gas and air? Like, what's the situation? And at first, didn't they tell us no? At first they said like my bay had some sort of problem with the gas and air, so I couldn't have it. And then later on another midwife came and then was like, oh, actually you can have it now. So she gave it. And somebody, and I don't remember, obviously I don't remember who it was, but I was just told like just to relax. And that was from a midwife, and I was thinking like, you have no idea how much pain I'm in right now. I physically like cannot function. To just be told like breathe through them. Like I was already trying to breathe through them. I was in so much pain, and I just thought it's not exactly the most reassuring thing to say to someone. And all of the women in that bay were like crying at this point and in so much pain. This is when I then asked for more pain relief, and I was offered pethidine. I really did not want to have pethidine because it crosses the placenta. That initially wasn't in my birth plan at all. I wanted the epidural. So when I said I don't want the pethidine, I want the epidural, I was then told there are no beds for you to get the epidural on the labour ward. Then I was like, fine, I don't care anymore. I don't give a shit. Give me the pethidine. And then I was told actually there needs to be 2 nurses to sign out the pethidine, and there's only one, some sort of problem with signing out the pethidine. And at this point I was like, right, I will get a doctor, one of my friends who's an independent prescriber, to come to this hospital. Can they come and sign it out? Like that's how desperate I was. Obviously the answer was no, but that's how like messed up I was in the head. They finally said, oh no, actually the staff member's here, we're going to give you the pethidine, but now we need a doctor to prescribe it. And we've bleeped the doctor multiple times and there's no response. So there was no prescriber then. Again, I was like, I can get someone. And I have friends who live nearby who are independent prescribers, and I was like literally gonna call them and be like, come into hospital now and prescribe this medication for me. And obviously they couldn't, they don't work for the hospital. So by the time that I got the pethidine, it was, I don't know, probably about 3 hours, right? Was it about 3 hours by the time I got the pethidine. I was also told to take a shower. And again, for someone who's in so much pain that I'm literally naked on all fours screaming in agony, to be told to like go and have a shower, I was lost for words. I went to have a shower, and in this hospital, the shower would turn on and off automatically. So every pretty much 30 seconds, the water would turn off and I'd have to press this button to turn it back on again. And I was just thinking like, please, I just want a shower. Like, who leaves a shower on accidentally? Like, why is this shower on one of those functions where basically it turns on automatically? Like, I really just did not understand. All I wanted was a nice warm shower, couldn't have that. And I was in so much pain that I'd have to sit on the toilet and then get back up to shower and then sit on the toilet again just to sit down and then get back up again. By this point, all of the other women that were sharing the baby with me, they were progressing faster than I was. So they were 2 or 3 or 4 centimeters. So they all got transferred to the labor ward. And at one point I was just left with my husband in the final bay, just in absolute agony. The only saving grace at this point was the fact that I started to actively bleed fresh blood. And that's when the midwives were kind of like, oh shit, like something's happening here. And I was terrified, like I thought something was happening to the baby. So then I started to cry. At one point, like they struggled to find the heartbeat. It was a few moments of like, what is going on? Like it was very, very like frantic, what is happening? Yeah, that was probably one of the scariest moments of like the whole time. Thankfully, nothing had happened to the baby, and thankfully I was bleeding, because that is when all of a sudden there was a bed, right? And I was transferred to the labor ward. So that was such a blur. It was like a bad dream. Like I remember everything in flashes because I had my eyes closed. I remember being in the elevator, but not quite. And all of your kind of dignity, your pride is just out the window. It's like, I didn't even feel like a human being at that point. I was just like a wounded animal just on a stretcher. That's how I felt. So when I was moved to the labor ward, I then asked for the epidural. A doctor came in, examined me again. And by that point he said 5 centimeters. And then they said, actually, your waters haven't even broken, which was like bizarre to me, because I don't know what it was then, that fluid that I thought initially was my waters, and the midwife had thought that too. But obviously if we'd known that, then maybe the pessary wouldn't have been taken out at that time. I don't know. But the doctor then broke my waters at that point, and I asked for the epidural. And I would say not the only, but one of the rudest staff members at this point to me at that time was the anaesthetist, because when she came in, there was no kind of sympathy, I guess, or understanding of how I felt in that situation. She was just like, get up, sit up straight. And I had such a big belly, and I couldn't do it, and I knew that I had to get in the right position, but she was like, if you don't get in the right position, you can't have this. And it was just like the way she spoke to me was really just, I would say, rude and abrupt. It's the first time that I really thought, like, what is wrong with this person? Like, why do they have no understanding of how I feel in that moment right now? But anyways, I got the epidural. The issue with the epidural that I then had was that it only worked on one side. I could feel all the contractions on my left hand side and no contractions on my right hand side. And that just, I don't know how to explain that, but basically it was just like I was being stabbed on the left hand side, but part of my body was really relaxed. I wasn't offered though for the epidural to be placed again. That midwife who was looking after me didn't really consider that as an option until there was a rotation, and the morning midwife came and she said, if your epidural's not working, we need to get this assessed. So then it was assessed again, which I'm very, very grateful for that midwife to bring in the anaesthetist again. So because I could feel the pain on my left hand side, I said, right, I just want a C-section now. Like, please give me a C-section. I can't go through this any longer. And the next problem we ran into was that there was a waiting line for a C-section. So at this point they said, you can't have the C-section now, but what we'll do is we're going to give you a hormone drip, which is stronger than the gel, and that will hopefully get you into labor. That will dilate you further. You're just gonna have to wait. So I got the hormone drip, waited another 4 hours with this hormone drip, feeling the contractions, feeling really tired, drained, lost, confused, just out of sorts, to be honest. 4 hours later, I was still only 4 to 5 centimeters dilated. And this is when I said, look, I can't go through this for another 4 hours. I simply just cannot do it. So please just get me into theatre. I want a C-section. Another reason that I went for the C-section was because of the risk of shoulder dystocia when it comes to bigger babies. And they kept on asking me, do you feel like something's pushing? Like, do you feel like heavy down there? And I literally didn't. I didn't feel like baby girl was gonna make her way down there. So at that point, I just knew I wanted a C-section and I wanted to see the baby. Another traumatizing thing during my whole C-section experience was the fact that I was lying there, basically like a rag doll being stitched up and opened up and stitched up again. And the lights above to, I guess for the surgeons and the doctors and the nurses and whatever to do this operation properly, the lights were reflective. So I could see myself being opened up. I could see everything. And I turned to my husband and I was like, please keep talking to me. Please keep talking to me. I mean, the only saving grace was that I couldn't feel anything because I had spinal block. But I could, if I just turned my head, I could see everything. And I think that to me is like one of the most traumatizing things I will ever go through, because I've always wanted more than one child. And to think that if I have another C-section, to go through that again, like knowing what I saw, like I don't know how I stayed calm. Like I really don't, because if I see stuff in a film, I've actually fainted in a cinema before because I've seen a gory scene. So for me to be able to see my own body opened up, and I don't even want to describe it because it makes me feel sick. And sometimes I'll lie awake at night and I'll like imagine myself on that theatre bed again, like it's actual trauma. And I mentioned it and I'm sure they could hear me, but I was saying I can see myself, and I don't know why they don't provide freaking blindfolds or something, or why that's okay. Like I can't understand why no one's fixed that issue yet. Like how is that acceptable for someone who, I don't know how I got through it, but like some people would not have been able to get through that, and that itself would trigger lifelong trauma, and it literally is for me as well. But that was just, I'll never want anyone to experience that. So that was another thing. And then obviously we're very grateful that baby girl arrived and she was healthy and stuff, and so I'm really grateful. And I'm not saying that this video means that I'm basically not taking anything for granted. I'm grateful for the healthcare, grateful for the fact that we're all healthy and stuff. But we got out, the final nail in the coffin was when I said all I want on my discharge letter is laxatives, because I need to be able to go to the toilet. Hadn't been for like 48 hours. That's all I want. I've got painkillers at home, just give me the laxatives. And I kid you not, they came with our discharge letters. Painkillers, yep, on the discharge letter, no laxatives. And I said, where are the laxatives? And they said, oh, actually, I don't know why the doctor's not added any. For them to add it, it's gonna probably take longer, so it's up to you. I think that's pretty much everything. Can you think of anything else? So one thing I also wanted to discuss is the fact that the birth partners get no support whatsoever. We get served meals, and I'm not saying that you would have enjoyed the meals, but the birth partners, at least one person, is there with you all the time. So it's not like my husband just left the ward. Like he was with me the entire time. He was not considered in this whole process. And I know that obviously, you know, the NHS is stretched out as it is, but that was something that made me quite sad. Like the fact that you got no food throughout all of it. Another thing is, my husband just mentioned that like every time they brought the food, couldn't eat it for some reason. Like the timing, obviously they have to stick to their times, but shit was going down each time. And when you've given birth, the one thing you want to do is kind of like rest and just have some time to sleep. But every half an hour we had someone come in to check on the baby, which great, like I'm very grateful for, but I think it was just a lot. All of it was just a lot. And being told off constantly, like being told you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. Like I don't know, it was just I did not have a positive birth experience. Like I said, there was positive moments throughout the whole thing, but overall it was just an absolute shit show. And most of the decisions that I had to make at the time were based literally on NHS availability of doctors, of medication. There's decisions that I had a birth plan, and literally none of that plan, surprise, surprise, went to plan. Like I literally wouldn't have chosen to have pethidine. Could I be moved to the labour ward and given the epidural? So that is my story. As much as I was so proud to work for the NHS, being a patient under the NHS was, in this case, just not so great. But that's just my honest opinion. To end it on a positive note, there were some really amazing staff members, some really amazing midwives who just, when I felt like so in usual circumstances, I would have been so embarrassed having like a catheter in and having that drained, and you're not there looking pretty basically. And in those moments, there were a few staff members who really made me feel like a person. That's one of the good things, and obviously we are very grateful to have a healthy baby girl. So everything happened to work out in the end, but that is my labour story. Yeah, I hope that I'll see you in the next video.